Have you ever noticed how some people seem to downplay your achievements or act like everything you do is a competition? You might be wondering, why do they do this? Is it just coincidence? Or is there something deeper going on? Well, what if I told you that these behaviors are often fueled by one powerful emotion, envy? Envy can be hard to spot, but understanding its signs can help you protect yourself from the toxic effects it can have on your relationships and well-being. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the subtle signs of envy and how it can show up in different areas of your life. We'll give you the tools you need to identify these behaviors and protect yourself from their damaging impact. Stick with us until the end. You're going to want to know these red flags. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone continuously points out your mistakes, no matter how small they are, while completely overlooking your successes? It can be incredibly frustrating when a person seems focused on your flaws rather than celebrating what you've accomplished. While these behaviors may seem innocent at first, they can be a sign of something deeper: envy. Envy is a powerful emotion that can often manifest in subtle ways, especially when people feel threatened by the success of others. One of the most common ways envy shows up is when someone consistently highlights your mistakes. These could be small errors, things that you would usually brush off or easily correct, but the envious person will exaggerate them or bring them up repeatedly, drawing attention to them in ways that make you feel like you're not measuring up. This behavior doesn't happen because they genuinely care about your improvement or want to offer helpful feedback. Instead, it's an attempt to diminish your accomplishments and make you feel less confident about your abilities. You might notice this kind of behavior in various settings at work, within your friend group, or even within your family. For example, let's say you're working on a project at work and you've just presented your ideas to your team. You're excited because you put a lot of thought and effort into it. Instead of receiving positive feedback or constructive criticism, one of your colleagues focuses only on the minor mistake you made in your presentation or a detail that didn't go as planned. They point it out in a way that makes you feel like your entire work is overshadowed by this one error. Meanwhile, they might completely ignore the innovative aspects of your ideas or the hard work you've put in. This type of behavior is not just about pointing out mistakes, it's about creating a narrative that undermines your achievements and your self-worth. The envious person's goal is to make your success seem smaller, less impressive, or even undeserving. By constantly highlighting the negative, they're hoping to shift the focus away from your strengths and accomplishments and make you question your own abilities. It's an attempt to deflate your sense of self-esteem and confidence, leaving you feeling less proud of what you've achieved. In many cases, the person pointing out your mistakes may not even realize they're doing it because envy often operates beneath the surface. The envious person might think that their behavior is harmless, or they might convince themselves that they're just being helpful by offering constructive criticism. However, the underlying motivation is often far from helpful. Their actions stem from feelings of insecurity, a fear that your success is somehow a threat to their own standing or worth. By constantly pointing out your flaws, they try to reassure themselves that they are still in control or that they are somehow superior to you. The effects of this type of behavior can be devastating. Over time, it can wear down your self-esteem, making you second-guess your abilities and accomplishments. When someone consistently diminishes your successes, it can leave you feeling less confident and even hesitant to pursue new goals or share your achievements in the future. You might start to doubt yourself, wondering if maybe they are right and your work really isn't as impressive as you thought. This kind of toxic behavior can create an environment where negativity and self-doubt thrive, and it becomes harder to feel proud of your own progress. It's important to recognize this pattern early on, as it can be difficult to see through the veiled criticism. One way to spot it is by paying attention to how the person interacts with you after you've shared a success or achievement. If their focus immediately shifts to a small mistake you made, or they seem overly critical of a minor detail, it's a sign that their attention is not on helping you grow, but on diminishing your accomplishments. They might also minimize the importance of your successes, suggesting that what you achieved wasn't really that big of a deal or that others have done the same thing, so it's nothing special. So what can you do when you recognize this behavior in someone? The first step is to understand that this criticism is not a reflection of your abilities or worth, it's a reflection of their feelings of insecurity and envy. The person may be struggling with their own sense of self-worth, and your success triggers their fears of inadequacy. This can be difficult to deal with, but it's important not to internalize their negative comments or let them undermine your confidence. One approach to managing this behavior is to address it directly. If you feel comfortable, you might want to have an open conversation with the person and explain how their constant criticism is affecting you. Be honest about how their behavior makes you feel and let them know that you would appreciate more constructive feedback rather than focusing on small mistakes. In some cases, this conversation may help the person become aware of their actions and adjust their behavior. However, it's important to keep in mind that someone who is envious may not be open to change, and it may take time for them to understand the impact of their behavior. Another strategy is to build your own resilience and self-esteem. The more confident you are in your abilities and achievements, the less likely it is that someone else's criticism will shake you. Focus on celebrating your successes, no matter how small, and remind yourself that your value is not determined by someone else's opinion of you. Surround yourself with supportive people who uplift you and encourage you to keep pushing forward. And try to distance yourself from those whose criticism feels more hurtful than helpful. Finally, remember that you don't have to accept toxic behavior in your relationships. If someone's envy is negatively impacting you and they refuse to change, it may be necessary to set boundaries or distance yourself from that person. Protecting your emotional well-being should always be a priority. You don't have to tolerate constant criticism or negativity, especially when it's driven by someone else's jealousy. By recognizing the subtle signs of envy, like the constant highlighting of your mistakes, you can take proactive steps to protect your confidence and continue striving toward your goals. Envy can be hard to deal with, but once you understand its roots and the behaviors that come with it, you can manage these situations more effectively and keep moving forward without letting anyone dim your light. Have you ever shared a success or accomplishment with someone, only to be met with an over-the-top negative reaction instead of the joy or encouragement you expected? This kind of behavior can be baffling and hurtful, especially when you've worked hard to achieve something important to you. Instead of celebrating with you, the person might display frustration, irritation, or even anger reactions that seem completely out of proportion to the situation. While it might feel confusing at first, this behavior could actually be a sign of envy. When someone reacts disproportionately to your successes, it's often an indication that they are struggling with feelings of insecurity or inadequacy. In these cases, your achievements may trigger their own feelings of failure or self-doubt. Instead of feeling happy for you, they may view your success as a reminder of what they haven't achieved or what they feel they're lacking. Rather than celebrating your growth, they feel threatened, and that threat manifests as frustration or even resentment. This type of behavior can occur in various contexts, whether in personal relationships, at work, or among friends. For instance, imagine you've just received a promotion or a significant recognition at your job. You're excited to share the news with a colleague or a friend, but instead of offering congratulations, they respond with criticism, saying things like, "I'm sure you only got that because of luck," or "that position is going to be way too stressful for you anyway." These types of comments are completely out of place in a situation where you should be receiving support and acknowledgement for your hard work. What's happening beneath the surface is that the envious person feels threatened by your success. When someone achieves something they desire or feel they deserve, it can make the envious individual reflect on their own shortcomings or perceived failures. Rather than acknowledging your success and feeling happy for you, they view it as a reminder of their own struggles, leading them to react in a way that isn't aligned with the positive nature of the situation. The more successful you become, the more their feelings of inadequacy may grow, causing their reactions to become more intense and harder to ignore. This disproportionate reaction might also stem from an unhealthy comparison between the two of you. The envious person might unconsciously measure their own success against yours, and if your accomplishments seem to outshine theirs, it can provoke a sense of competition, frustration, or even anger. This is especially true in highly competitive environments like the workplace, where professional achievements often serve as markers of status and value. In these environments, one person's success can easily be perceived as a threat to another's sense of security or worth. The negative reactions from an envious person can be emotionally draining. It can be hard to understand why someone isn't happy for you or why they seem so irritated by your progress. You may begin to question whether you've done something wrong, or whether your success really isn't something to be proud of. This type of emotional backlash can also erode your confidence, as you might start to doubt whether your achievements are as significant as you once thought. In these situations, it's important to recognize that the envious person's reaction is not about you, it's about their own feelings of insecurity and their struggle to cope with their own sense of inadequacy. It's not a reflection of your worth, or the validity of your success. By keeping this perspective, you can avoid internalizing their reactions or allowing them to undermine your achievements. Understanding that their reactions are driven by envy can help you handle these situations with more empathy and resilience. Instead of taking their negativity personally, try to see it as a sign that they are grappling with their own issues. It can be helpful to remind yourself that their feelings are not your responsibility. You've worked hard to achieve your goals, and their emotional responses are rooted in their own personal struggles, not in any fault of yours. While it can be painful to witness someone close to you react negatively to your success, it's important to protect your own emotional well-being. One way to do this is to focus on cultivating a strong sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on others' reactions. If you feel secure in your accomplishments, it will be easier to brush off these disproportionate reactions without letting them affect your confidence or motivation. If you feel comfortable, it might also be helpful to have an open conversation with the person about their behavior. In some cases, they may not realize how their responses are affecting you, and a candid discussion could help clear the air and restore the relationship. However, keep in mind that some people may not be open to discussing their feelings, or may not even recognize that their reactions are driven by envy. In these cases, setting boundaries and protecting yourself emotionally may be the best course of action. At the same time, it's important to remember that you don't have to tolerate being put down or belittled, even if the person's jealousy is subtle. You deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate your successes and support your growth, not those who respond with negativity or competition. If someone consistently reacts with disproportionate anger or frustration toward your achievements, it may be necessary to reassess the relationship and consider whether it's worth maintaining. When someone reacts with irritation or frustration to your success, it's important to keep in mind that their reaction is not a reflection of your worth or accomplishments. Their emotional response is tied to their own insecurities, fears, and feelings of inadequacy. Recognizing this dynamic can help you navigate these situations with more understanding and resilience. It can also help you develop stronger boundaries and protect your own self-esteem from the negative effects of their envy. Ultimately, focusing on your own growth and surrounding yourself with supportive people who celebrate your success will help you stay motivated and confident as you continue to achieve your goals. Have you ever been in a situation where someone who should be supportive of you seems to withhold valuable information or resources? It could be something as simple as not sharing key details about a work project, or even something more personal, like not telling you about social opportunities or helpful contacts. This behavior can be a subtle yet strong sign of envy. When a person deliberately avoids sharing useful information, it's often because they feel threatened by your potential success or see your growth as a challenge to their own status. In many cases, people who exhibit this kind of behavior are motivated by the belief that sharing valuable resources will benefit you, but at their own expense. They see the distribution of information as a zero-sum game, meaning that if you gain something, it's automatically a loss for them. This type of thinking often stems from feelings of insecurity or fear. The envious person may feel that helping you would elevate you in a way that diminishes their own position, so they choose to withhold information or resources to maintain their advantage. This tendency to withhold can play out in different areas of life. For example, in the workplace, you might notice a colleague who deliberately doesn't inform you about an important upcoming meeting or a networking opportunity that could advance your career. They might even subtly make things more difficult for you by not sharing insights or tips that could help you avoid mistakes. Rather than seeing your success as something to celebrate, they view it as a threat and act in a way that limits your potential. In a more personal context, you might experience this behavior from a friend or family member. Perhaps they avoid telling you about social events that could help expand your network or opportunities that could enrich your life. This can be particularly painful, as it feels like a betrayal of trust, especially when the relationship is one that should be supportive and encouraging. In these situations, the envious person might feel that by withholding these opportunities, they can maintain control over their own social or personal environment, ensuring they remain at the center of attention or the go-to person in the group. The root of this reluctance to share lies in the envious person's fear of being overshadowed. They may see you as a competitor and believe that helping you would somehow take away from their own achievements or future opportunities. It's a deeply competitive and often subconscious mindset where they feel that if you succeed, they fail. This mindset can be especially damaging in both personal and professional relationships, as it breeds an environment of mistrust and hostility rather than cooperation and support. You might be able to spot these behaviors through careful observation. For example, you might notice that when you share your goals or aspirations with certain individuals, they avoid offering advice or guidance even when it would be beneficial to you. In contrast, others might go out of their way to offer helpful suggestions, resources, or connections. These patterns can reveal a lot about the dynamics of your relationship with the person in question. The refusal to share helpful resources or information can also create a toxic environment, especially in a workplace or community setting. If someone consistently withholds important knowledge, it can stunt your growth and limit your ability to succeed. Over time, this can leave you feeling isolated or unsupported, which can be both frustrating and demotivating. In the long term, it may even affect your self-esteem, as you might begin to internalize the belief that you don't deserve to succeed or that you aren't capable of achieving your goals on your own. Recognizing this behavior is the first step in dealing with it. Once you are aware that someone is withholding resources or information out of envy, you can take action to protect yourself. One of the best ways to handle this situation is to start relying on other sources for the information or resources you need. Building a network of people who are supportive and willing to share their knowledge can help you avoid becoming dependent on someone who is actively trying to limit your success. Surrounding yourself with people who genuinely want to see you thrive can provide the encouragement and insights that you might not receive from the envious individual. In some cases, addressing the issue directly with the person involved may help resolve the tension. For example, you could approach the person and express your concerns in a non-confrontational way. You might say something like, "I noticed that you didn't share certain details about the upcoming project, and I was hoping to learn more about it to better prepare." This opens the door for dialogue and can help the person realize the impact their behavior is having on you. However, it's important to keep in mind that some people may not be aware of how their actions are affecting you, while others may be resistant to change. If direct confrontation isn't possible or doesn't yield results, it may be necessary to find alternative ways of obtaining the resources you need. This could involve seeking out other colleagues, mentors, or friends who are more willing to share information and support your goals. The more you rely on your own initiative and resourcefulness, the less power the envious person will have over your progress. Additionally, by building stronger, more supportive relationships, you can create an environment where you don't feel as vulnerable to the actions of those who might try to limit your potential. It's also crucial to manage your expectations in these situations. Not everyone you encounter will be generous with their knowledge or resources, and some people may act out of jealousy or fear of being overshadowed. This doesn't necessarily reflect your worth or abilities. Recognizing that these actions are a reflection of the envious person's insecurities rather than your own shortcomings can help you stay focused on your goals and avoid letting their behavior affect your self-esteem. Ultimately, dealing with someone who refuses to share useful resources or information requires a combination of awareness, resilience, and proactive steps to build a support system. By identifying the signs of envy and addressing them in a constructive way, you can protect yourself from the harmful effects of their behavior and continue to pursue your personal and professional growth with confidence. Have you ever experienced someone suddenly becoming overly competitive with you, especially in areas where you used to feel relaxed and enjoy your passions? It's a strange and often uncomfortable situation where something you've been doing for fun or personal development turns into a battleground for someone else's insecurities. This type of rivalry, particularly when it feels excessive or out of place, can be a clear sign that envy is at play. You might be someone who loves a particular hobby or passion, whether it's photography, playing a musical instrument, or even a sport. At first, you enjoy it for its own sake, free from competition. But suddenly, a person around you who may have never shown any interest in the activity before begins to compete with you. They might start showing up at the same events, mimicking your actions, or even making comments trying to outdo you. It can start off subtly, with them casually mentioning how they've picked up the hobby as well, but over time it escalates into a form of competition that feels uncomfortable and uninvited. This behavior typically stems from a place of insecurity. When a person feels envious of someone else's success or mastery in a certain area, they might start to feel threatened. Instead of appreciating the other person's talent or interest, they start seeing it as something that diminishes their own value. They feel like they need to prove themselves in that same space, even if it was never their passion to begin with. The goal isn't just to enjoy the activity, it's to show that they can do it better or at least on par with you. For example, imagine a situation where a colleague at work who has always been somewhat indifferent to golf suddenly starts playing regularly. At first, they might just play occasionally, but then they begin entering tournaments and discussing golf more than ever. comparing their progress with yours. What started out as a shared interest between friends or colleagues has now turned into a rivalry. You might find yourself feeling self-conscious about your own enjoyment of the sport, as the activity that once brought you peace now feels more like a performance. In a similar way, you might experience this from a friend or family member. If you've been into photography for a while and shared your passion with those close to you, it can be a fun way to bond. But if someone close to you, who's never shown much interest in photography, suddenly buys the best camera and starts posting pictures all over social media, trying to one-up you, it can feel hurtful. Their enthusiasm may not come from a genuine love for photography, but from a desire to compete. They want to prove they can do what you do, and even do it better. This type of rivalry is often rooted in the envious person's need for validation. If they feel overshadowed by your success or growth in a particular area, they will engage in competition to restore their own sense of worth. What can make this even more difficult is that these individuals might not even be aware that their actions are driven by envy. They might tell themselves they're just trying to improve or make the activity more fun, but deep down, their need to prove themselves may be overshadowing your original enjoyment of the hobby or activity. Handling this type of situation can be tricky. On one hand, it's understandable that someone might want to improve in an area they admire or respect. But when it crosses into excessive rivalry, it can sour the experience for everyone involved. The competitive nature of their actions can create tension where there once was camaraderie. It can make what should be a joyful and relaxing hobby into a source of stress and anxiety. One of the best ways to manage this kind of situation is to recognize that the person's actions aren't a reflection of your abilities or worth. Instead, their competitiveness is rooted in their own insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. While this doesn't make their behavior right, it helps to understand the motivation behind it. When you see their rivalry as a product of their internal struggles rather than a direct challenge to you, it can be easier to detach emotionally from the situation. You can also consider having an open and honest conversation with the person about how their behavior is affecting your enjoyment of the activity. In a respectful way, you can explain that the rivalry is creating tension and that you would prefer to keep the activity fun and supportive rather than competitive. Sometimes a simple discussion about expectations and boundaries can go a long way in alleviating unnecessary conflict. Another approach is to distance yourself from the situation if the rivalry continues to feel uncomfortable. If someone's need to compete is negatively impacting your experience, it might be best to set some boundaries around the activity. You don't have to share every detail of your passion with them, and you might even choose to enjoy it without their involvement. It's important to remember that your hobbies and interests are for your own enjoyment, not to be used as a point of comparison for someone else's ego. In some cases, it may also be helpful to consider the larger dynamics at play. For example, in a group of friends, one person's jealousy of your success or expertise in a particular area can affect the whole group's atmosphere. If other people in the group are also noticing this rivalry, it may be useful to have a group discussion to address the tension and clarify expectations. It's essential to create a space where everyone can feel comfortable and supported, rather than in competition with each other. It's crucial to keep in mind that you cannot control someone else's actions, but you can control how you respond to them. If the rivalry continues and affects your well-being or enjoyment, it's okay to take a step back and reevaluate the relationship. At the end of the day, your hobbies and passions should bring you joy and fulfillment, not stress or frustration. By setting healthy boundaries and maintaining confidence in your own abilities, you can continue to enjoy the things you love, even if others around you are trying to turn them into a competition. Recognizing the subtle signs of envy in your relationships is an essential step in protecting your emotional and mental well-being. Envy can show up in many forms, but understanding these behaviors gives you the tools to manage them constructively. By setting boundaries, fostering open communication, and maintaining self-confidence, you can navigate these tricky dynamics with grace. If you found this video helpful, be sure to leave a like and share it with others who might benefit from it. You deserve to thrive without letting envy hold you back.